Hello everybody and welcome to the first of my 2016 webinar series, Grow Your Law Firm. Happy New Year. I can't believe it's almost the end of February already, but time does get away on us. So today's webinar is on how to increase profitability in your firm. My name's Matt Sleater. I'm the lawyer's accountant. I specifically work with legal firms throughout Australia as their accountant, but doing a lot of work with them, focusing on profit and cash flow strategies within their firm. Today we're going to be keeping away from the theory and that if you've attended some of my previous webinars, we would have gone through how those strategies get implemented. What we're doing today is we're going to focus on 3 different case studies for some of my clients that for what they've been doing in their firms over recent months to get some changes in their numbers. So, for those of you who have read my book, The Revenue Revolution for Law Firms, a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is all covered in my book. If you haven't, you're able to purchase a copy at our website at financiallywellorganised.com. Like with most webinars that I run, I just like to get a bit of a feel for who's attending today. So I'm just going to run a couple of questions through. So first of all, have you attended a Grow Your Law Firm webinar in the past? If you just tick the appropriate answer, that'd be great. Something seems to be going a little bit askew here. Sorry, I've got something's just playing up with my polls. There we go. So looking at where you're located. So looking at that today, we've got a quarter of between Queensland and Victoria, and the rest in New South Wales. So thanks for that. And also just having a look at whether or not you're a principal of the firm. So if you could just jot down whether you are or not. There'll be plenty of content today that we run through that's just as relevant for employees and practice managers in terms of driving revenue within your firm. So we'll just close that one off. So about half and half. So welcome everybody, and look, thank you again for your attendance today. So let's get well and truly into it. What we're going to be focusing on today is the business planning element of what I call financially well organised strategies for my clients. So there's a whole lot of other stuff that you need to focus on, but the one that really drives your wealth at any point in time is your business plan. So looking at profit and cash, basically it's pretty basic. How do we increase our profit? We got to increase our revenue, reduce our costs, and do a mixture of both. It's pretty simple stuff, but the methodology around how we go about doing that is critical. From a cash perspective, to improve our cash flow, provided our profit improves, we've just got to collect our cash earlier. So what I'm going to go through today is a number of case studies around profit and cash flow strategies that firms have been implementing and have been getting different results. As I said, all these are covered off in my book, Revenue Revolution for Law Firms. So we all know who that guy is, Albert Einstein. And I ask this question often of people, are you insane? Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And as I review firms and work with firms, around the country, I work with firms from Cairns to Melbourne and coastline, everywhere pretty much in between, out to Mildura and central Queensland and all over the place. I see exactly the same thing. I see the firms being focused on purely strategies around charging hours to their clients. I see the focus is on principals having hefty productivity numbers. I see the non-principal fee earners generally having lower productivity. I see poor client engagement. I see discretion around billing. I see discretion around trust account activity in terms of what's required to be in there, not in terms of discretion around what people do with the money. Um, but I see all of these simple practices and processes that can be changed in firms to produce a different result. So when you're going through today and listening in on the webinar, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about, well, with this example, what is it that we should be doing differently? The fact is, you get to work every morning and you got a file load and you need to bang out a certain number of hours. You need to get this bill done. You got this employee, needing this time and so on. But at the end of the day, if you want to get a significantly different result in terms of the profitability and cash flow of your practice, you must do something different because it generally isn't working. I only work in the 1 to 3 principal size firm space, as I said, I see the same things happening in all of these firms, and it's just about getting a different outcome from doing something differently. So we're going to look at 3 different case studies. The first one is a profit-based case study, and it's pretty high level. We're not going to bang around on the numbers too much. I'm going to talk about what this firm has done, but the focus for this firm was very much just on increasing billings from existing matters. So we're not talking here about going out, finding more clients, finding more matters, creating new products and services. All we're talking about here is from the matters that are already being won, that are already being done within the firm. How do we get more revenue out of them? The second profit strategy or case study we're going to look at here is look at how this particular firm has gone around generating new revenue from existing clients. The new revenue hasn't come from finding new products and services to provide. It's just taking a different approach, a proactive approach around how this particular firm engages and works with their clients. I'll show you the results that they've been achieving. And lastly, a cash case scenario. So it's really looking at this particular firm around how they had to engage their client differently and then put into place strong, structured collection processes and systems within their business that significantly turn their cash flow around. So let's look at the first one. Case study number 1. So as I said, we're focusing here on increasing the billings from existing matters. So remembering here that these firms are 1 to 3 principal size firms. They might have different numbers of solicitors and legal support staff, different ratios. They might do different areas of law, but across all the practices, it is exactly the same issues generally when I go into them and have a look at them and help them develop their strategies to get these different outcomes. So with this particular firm, a suburban practice focusing on family and estate style work, it's a sole practitioner firm. Currently, you've got 2 solicitors that are working in the firm. 18 months ago, there were no other solicitors besides the principal. They now have 2 legal support staff there as well. Going back 18 months ago, that number was at about 1.2, and there's a part-time admin person. So pretty standard looking practice. This firm doesn't do anything generally by the way of conveyances or any commercial work. Doesn't touch PI. very much sticks to their knitting around family matters and estate matters. So the focus for this firm was on existing revenue. So I had a look at the firm and said, okay, well, out of what we've already got here in terms of the work we're doing, what do we need to do about increasing that? How do we get more out of the work that we're doing? And I'm not just talking about going and increasing charge rates and billing clients more, building more hours into WIP. I'm talking about looking at the processes that are occurring in this business that actually sabotaged the amount of revenue that was being generated. So the issues in the business were very much around how much WIP was being written off. So what's happening in the firm when it comes to billing time? There was basically that should be a write-off of WIP of 27%. Basically what they were doing is they were write off 27% of their time. And then what they were also doing for 90% of the billings, they were encouraging their clients to pay on time by offering them a 10% discount on that bill. So the impact of that was basically about a 35% discount or write-off between the amount of time that was going into WIP and the amount of time that was actually getting billed. So 1/3 of the time didn't end up in cash. So let's just have a look at what we did with this particular firm. So this is just a little calculator that I use in firms when I go in and analyse it. Here's some numbers for this particular firm. So remembering that 18 months ago when I started working with this firm, they only had one principal, and they only really had one other fee earner at that time. They had employed a lawyer, and they'd they'd been working there for a little bit of time. So the numbers as they stood when we went and had a look at this firm, we had one principal and one full-time equivalent fee earner, and that was at this time a solicitor. So that gives us that the productivity for that principal was at 72%, and the productivity for the fee earner was at 55%. So once again, a very typical outcome that I see in firms where the principals are banging out the hours and the non-principal fee earners are not meeting appropriate productivity numbers. The average charge rate in this firm was $350 an hour. They were recovering 73% of that, so that was the 27% write-off. The professional fees billed were $542, and the majority of those clients took advantage of the 10% discount, so the fees collected were $488. So effectively, that revenue dropped, by about $54,000 just between what was billed and what was collected, let alone what was charged into WIP. So just to give you a little bit of a picture of the different outcome that got produced for this firm when we made some decisions. So we made some decisions specifically around billing and specifically around the collection discount. So from a recovery rate perspective, we did a few things. I challenged the principal of this firm around why they wrote off time, and challenged him around improving those write-offs. And the what we found that was happening, it was just the process by which he was going through around issuing those fees. So the strategy that we implemented ended up being quite simple. What we want to do is we want to change his approach to billing so that we got a different billing outcome of the client. So remember, these are the same matters. And what I became aware of was what he was doing when it would come time to do a bill, he'd be pulling out the whip list, looking at all the whip that was done, and then just taking the view that I've got to issue an itemised bill to my client. I think that with every client, they're going to question what the detail is. And I said to him, so why do you have to issue an itemised bill? And he said, oh, this is what I've always done. And I said, well, the law doesn't require you to do that. You've got to be able to produce an itemised fee if the client requests one. You've got all of that there. I said, you've already engaged the client around what you're going to be doing for them. You've given an estimate. You've scoped it all out. They know the work that's being done. So just send out a bill that isn't itemised, and then the client you won't have the fear of scrutiny. So we did that, and basically what we found is that because he just had that change in the process and the change of his thinking, where he then wasn't concerned about every client scrutinising a bill, but he had a process in place then to issue an itemised bill if a client requested. What he tended to then do was improve his write-offs. Oh, I'm just going to put some zeros up in here. We didn't change any of that. So he improved his write-offs by 8%. What he found is that what he did with those, when he changed his process from itemised bills to non-itemised bills, he basically just wrote a letter to all the clients on his matters and said, we're just simplifying our administration process, and this is what we're going to be doing. We will always be offering, you'll always get an itemised bill if you want to. Just let me know if you'd prefer to get an itemised bill to start with. Nobody wrote back and said, no, I don't want one. So he just did his itemised bills and found out that he really wasn't getting any inquiries from his clients about those fees. So automatically he had an improvement in his revenue just from the work that he was doing. What we also did at the same time is that we cancelled the collection discount, and we worked out a strategy if his clients rang up and asked for one. So we thought, well, what will happen? So we just stopped it. We didn't tell clients we were no longer doing it, but they just were never given that option on those invoices anymore. So we had, and the solution, if he did get an inquiry, was just to say, my accountant said that I am no longer allowed to issue this discount. He had one client ring up and ask him. The paralegal who took that call said, the lawyer's accountant said that he's no longer allowed to do it, and so what this client did was said, okay, and just paid that night. So there was no issue. So we were actually implementing a strategy in the system, in implementing a system that was sabotaging the outcome. So when we got rid of that discount of collections and more appropriately billed, then he automatically got a revenue and cash flow uptick of $113,000 annualised. And we saw this just happen in his monthly billings and cash collections over the subsequent months. We started seeing that growth as his recovery rate improved and as his collection rate improved. Mind you, my solution for him was to say your recovery rate needs to be at 100%, but we negotiated an interim approach of at least getting that down to below 20%. And what he's proceeded to do is he's proceeded to bill clients more of the WIP now as the engagement has further improved and so on. So let me just that was some of the first strategies that we implemented, and what we then started focusing on was we need to get better leverage. We've got in this particular firm we need to get that shift right between principals and fee earners. We have more than enough work. In fact, the principal continued to chase his tail, trying to get all of the work done. So we focused on some leverage strategies and looked at. I'll just delete a few of these. So we then looked at our leverage strategies and focused on increasing our fee earners to 2 solicitors. So this is also, these numbers are, we've also got him focusing since since that first strategy on also looking at recovering time from the fee earners. The legal support staff. So what I'm talking about here now is the legal the solicitors in terms of those two fee earner numbers. So we put an extra fee earner in there to manage the capacity. We've then got him now focusing on doing less hours and focusing more on better client engagement, better review of better delegation and supervision. And now, after we just met a couple of days ago, his next strategy for this quarter is starting to work on strategies to drive new matters to come into the business. But I won't do anything about that. So his focus now is to get his revenue down, his productivity down to 45%. So about 3.5 hours a day of productive time. And then increasing his fee earners by at least another 17%, getting them up to about 5.5 hours a day of chargeable hours. We also said, now that the confidence is up and he's had these experiences with those clients, that they actually do value what he does and they pay him when he bills them. Then we also did a revision of his charge rates. And as an average across the charge rates between his solicitors and himself, we've ended up focusing on an average charge rate increase of $10. Mind you, that average $10 comes about because his charge rates increased significantly, but we've also got a solicitor that is a senior solicitor and one that is a bit more junior solicitor. So the average of all of those charge rates ends up being $360. He still hasn't quite got to his 100% yet of recovery of time, but he's now continuously hitting an 85% recovery. So we've got an improvement in his write-off down from 27 to 15%, and the impact of that is an additional $424,000 worth of billings. He's opening the appropriate amount of files, the velocity is working nicely, the files are getting completed. But at the same time, what he's also doing is collecting almost 100% of the amounts that are being billed through strong engagement processes right at the front end. So where we've got fees collected originally when we started out here of $488,000, we've almost doubled that. And over the next 12 months, we're going to see this particular firm is going to see his revenues hit for the first time ever over $1 million. And that's without significant increasing of direct labour cost and really no increase in overhead. And it was all just a matter of getting the function right between who's doing what in terms of doing productive work, getting the pricing right, making sure that what should be getting billed is getting billed, and making sure that whatever is getting billed is then getting collected. So we're seeing now $80,000 to $85,000 we're seeing the gap between what's being added into WIP and what's being collected, getting towards that $80,000 to $85,000 a month now, and cash flow is sorted. So that's just an example of a real life case study of what a firm has done to get completely different outcomes in terms of their financials, simply by changing systems and processes. Core system was better engagement with clients at the front end so that they know what they're doing, valuing what he does, and stop doing itemised bills and doing just a single fee for the client each month. Then going and ditching the collection discount, and then getting the mix right between what he does at his rate and what the other solicitors are doing. So that's case study one. Very happy client. He told me the other day that what we've been doing here has changed his life. and it's very nice to hear that. So going on now to case study 2. Case study 2 was then strategies looking at profits, increasing profits, but new revenue from existing clients. So this particular practice I've been working with for a number of years. So similar to the first case study, the initial strategies implemented with this firm were very much around getting their margins right, around what they bill clients, how they engage clients, what sort of work they do. More importantly for this client, what sort of work they didn't do anymore in terms of their high volume, low cost type work, and basically got the KPIs and the ratios right in that firm. Got them focused on good engagement, better trust account activity, more regular billing, driving WIP days down, driving debtors days down. And then we've got this business is then at the point of saying, okay, what do we need to do now to drive our revenue up? And if you've read my book, in one of the chapters in there, I talk about proactive revenue versus reactive revenue. In the majority of firms, the revenue that's generated is reactive revenue. It's all client instigated. It just walks in the door when the client needs it done. There might be a bit of marketing that's done by the firm, but minimal, and the firms are very reactive. So I see this in nearly every single legal firm. So the idea of new revenue from existing clients is to start taking a proactive revenue approach. So just look at the profile there, very similar. This firm right now, 2 principals, 2 solicitors, 3.7 legal support staff, and 2 administration staff. Again, a suburban practice. I see the fact that it's suburban or CBD doesn't make any difference whether they're in Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne. Doesn't make any difference whether they're rural or regional based. Doesn't matter. It is exactly the same issues because you're dealing with exactly the same clients. They are generally individuals and small to medium-sized enterprises. They might do different things. There might be different socio-economic constraints. But fundamentally, you're providing the same style of services to the same style of target market. So this particular firm has an emphasis on commercial and estate work. So the focus for this firm is on driving proactive revenue. What I mean, as I said, by proactive revenue, it's revenue strategies, revenue that's been instigated by the firm, where they have gone and engaged with the clients around specific strategies to open matters, not where the clients have just walked in and given them a call and said, we need to do this or we need to do that. So we're focusing on existing products, so existing things that the firm already does for existing clients. So we're not going and investing time in finding new stuff. So for example, estate planning, strategies around how, about making sure clients' estate planning is in order proactively. Looking at businesses, whether or not they've got appropriate employment agreements in place, whether or not their terms and conditions are right. All of these different sorts of things that are relevant for every business that the firm already did. So it's not about new stuff. It's existing stuff, existing services to existing clients. And the outcome that we wanted to look at is increasing the matter numbers by proactively opening these files with clients, and then increasing the matter dollars. Because when you find that when you're proactively going and working with clients and working with them to identify their needs and addressing that, generally, provided your engagement processes are right, generally those clients are more receptive to larger fees. So what we did is we followed a structured process, and this is a process that I do in my firm. This is a process that I get my clients to do when they're ready, because they need to get the foundations right in their firm before they start driving revenue. But it's the same as any business. It's who's my clients, who are my clients, what services have we provided, what services haven't we provided, what do we need to be providing. Let's go out and have conversations with them. So what was it, the structured process? The goal is to have meetings with all clients over time. Who are we talking about? We're talking about existing clients. So we have to create a list of existing clients. How do we do it? The principals of the firm are calling to make appointments, a simple strategy that cannot be delegated, to go and meet with these clients. When are they going to be doing it? We're going to be they're currently focusing on, and continuing even more so, on focusing on 2 meetings per week. And where are these held? They're held at the client's premises, and they are held for free. We are not trying to generate chargeable hours here. It is engaging with the clients in an environment that they're comfortable in, so that we can identify their needs. So let's look at the process. What did we do? So basically, we created a sales process. We created a step-by-step procedure that they needed to follow, try and test, that works, but they then need to tailor it themselves so that they can get and produce the outcome for the revenue that they wanted to generate. But as an aside, what it also did for clients, and it is doing for clients, it is making the clients realise, hey, you guys are thinking about me. I really appreciate that. I haven't thought about these, even where there mightn't be anything that they can do for that particular client from that point on. The client's so happy because they've stopped and had a conversation. So it's just like when you do a will, or you manage a PI file, or you have a family law matter. When you look to apply for probate, do a conveyance, whatever it is, there is a process that you go through to ensure that gets done efficiently and produces a predictable outcome. So all this process is a process within the firm to ensure that they maximise the probability of a predictable outcome with clients. So the first thing we did is we talked about what it is they're going to be doing. And what these guys did is they decided that they were just going to do a checklist of things that are relevant, that needed to be addressed for their SME clients, small and medium enterprises. So there's a checklist over a range of different areas of law that they needed to focus on. So they produced that. And they didn't produce anything fancy. It was on an A4 piece of paper that had a series of questions that were segmented into areas like employment, contracts, whatever it might have been. And then they had 4 or 5 questions that they asked and got the clients to rank how they feel in terms of, where they sit in terms of that particular area, whether or not there's any issues, whether or not there's something they need to do to minimise their risk. So the first thing they had to do was book a meeting. Get their list of clients, identify how many they're going to call in that week, and book a meeting. Then what they did is they had to send out a meeting invite via Outlook to those clients. And there's a reason for that. You want the client to engage and say, yes, thank you, I'm going to accept that meeting, and I'm going to do it at our office. It's an important part of this process is to keep the clients engaged in the process throughout. They then ran the first meeting. And the first meeting was nothing more than a conversation starter. There was no desire, and there's no intent that at this meeting you are trying to open a matter. It might just so happen that when you do this, that a client says, I've got this need now, it's got nothing to do with your checklist, let's go and deal with that. Great. So the whole idea of this is for these guys to just have a conversation starter and have a structure around how they do this. So basically when they booked the meeting, they said, look, what we're doing with all of our clients over the next 12 months is we're wanting to make sure that there's no areas of risk that are existing within your firm. Over the last number of months, we've had a few matters where if the clients had come to us previous to this and we'd put into place some strategies around whatever it was, then they might not have had this legal matter. We could have proactively address this in advance. So we just wanted to make sure all of our clients are not exposed to unnecessary risk. So, you know, what client doesn't want to talk about that? So they just ran through the simple checklist with them, had conversations with them around, if one was, oh, we've got issue, we haven't got any of that in place and it's an issue in 5, yeah, we have got everything in place, it's good, or somewhere in between. If a client's at a 2, then you could say to them, so tell me about that. What's the issues here? How does this apply to your business? And have conversations around that. So basically all it is, it's identifying what the client's priorities. And the only job of the principal at that meeting was to have another meeting with them. So the only job they had to walk away with, if there were issues for the client that needed to be addressed, was to explore that deeper in a second meeting. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm so busy, I haven't got time to run these meetings. Well, if you're going to proactively drive revenue from your clients, you need to take time to build that relationship even deeper and explore and scope that work. The better you do this, the more opportunities will be presented to themselves of working more closely with clients. And most importantly, when you do that second meeting for the client, it's also for free. Big shift that I had to get in this particular client from going out and visiting clients at their premises and spending time with them to understand their needs and not rack up any hours that you're going to ultimately bill for them. The clients are so much more comfortable and more open to engage with you when you do it and you do that. So only goal for meeting 1 was to schedule in meeting 2 with a list of priorities that you go and talk to. Get back to the office, send out the meeting request, client books that in. What then happens is they're just taking a clean copy of that little checklist and then just updating it on Word, by crossing or ticking where the client marked their assessment of that issue, and then just sending a PDF back to the client. So the client had a record of what they've said their priorities are and the issues. And you've gone and narrowed it down to talk about maybe if there were 8 different areas of law or issues that you needed to address, you're looking at with that client, they might only have 1 and 2. And the purpose of the next meeting is just to focus on that 1 and 2 and get some depth. So you run meeting 2, and basically what they did with the clients are reconfirm those priorities. These are the 2 priorities or 3 priorities based on the checklist, then delving deeper into those issues with the clients, not giving them any solutions, mainly asking questions, giving them a bit of an idea around further as to what the issues are, why we've got to address these, and making sure that you've got alignment with the client that this is there is stuff that's got to be done. Really understanding these 3 things from the clients, what their objectives are around this. Even though you've instigated this awareness, the client will have specific objectives that they will want to achieve. So understanding what those objectives are, understanding when the client will be able to measure if those objectives have been achieved, and then lastly, and most importantly, if those objectives have been achieved, then what will that mean to the client? What's the value? Not what you think it is, it's only relevant as to what they think the value is. The higher the value, the more important the objectives, the higher the alignment to price for a client. The lower the value, the lower the pricing. And their only job then is to book in meeting 3. You might be thinking to yourself, another meeting. But the importance of this is you're not trying to close. If this is so important for the client that they get on with this, your next meeting might be the next day. But you need to separate your conversations for when you start talking about price, so that it gives the client the opportunity to consume what you've done. What you ask at the end of that meeting before you book in the 3rd meeting is you say to them, so is this something that you'd like us to proceed with? They'll say yes. They say, well, what we need to do is I need to go away and think about this. I need to give it some thought and think about the different approaches. I'm going to come up with a number of options that are available for you, but let's book in a meeting where I can come back and present that to you. And then depending on the urgency, will be depending on how quickly you come back to them. Generally, you'd like to do that within a few days, no more than a week. Once again, book it in at the client's premises. So then again, you send out the meeting invite. The client accepts that meeting because that keeps them engaged in the process. If you've got some relevant content, so let's say it's about employment law issues, then you might have a simple white paper or an article that you email to the client to say, well, here, have a read of this because it covers off the things we're going to be looking at. So content production is a completely different thing we're going to be talking about at a different time. And that's around marketing. So you prepare an implementation plan and a cost agreement. So you go and do this because the clients verbally agree that that's what you want to be doing, providing them options. You will outline in there. You'll outline, the pricing. You'll outline the scope. You'll talk about all of your terms. And in that meeting, you'll reconfirm the objectives, measures, and values. You'll run through the deliverables around what you're going to do, and then you will close it. The idea of that meeting is to get them to sign it. Look, sometimes in these meetings, sometimes depending on what the urgency is, you need to be able to get from meeting 1 to meeting 3 within that one meeting. You've got to use your judgment. But generally, where you're actively going out, proactively going out, and making clients aware of their needs, you need to give the client space over time to absorb the information. So basically at the end of that meeting, you look to book in a date to start the work. If the client hasn't signed it and doesn't sign up there and then, and they don't want to, you've got to give them time to sign the cost agreement, at least get them to sign, yep, that's an implementation plan, I want to do that, take the cost agreement away. Then you book in a date to start the work, because by doing that, if the client says, yeah, let's start it by that time, the client's basically giving you their commitment that they're going to proceed completely. And then you send out the signed documents to the clients after that. So when you get the cost agreements back signed, scan it, send a copy of it back to them. So what happened? So that was just basically a process, and they felt a bit awkward starting it, but it's a fundamental process that's worked in professional services firms around the world for a very long time. The results, Christmas got in the road with these guys. This was their focus for the last quarter. They didn't book all the meetings that they were supposed to, but they only booked 7 meetings. One of the principals did the majority of these. They only booked 7 meetings. That was at meeting 1. And then out of those meetings, as they've followed that process, they've signed up $27,195 of matters that have been completed or signed up. And they've also got $29,000 worth of matters that are in the pipeline. So in the pipeline, in terms of that period of time between they've had the second meeting and they've identified it and they've got to go back and have the last meeting this was as of yesterday, have the last meeting to sign them up, or they've agreed to it but they haven't got all the signed documents back. So from 7 meetings, they've already generated $27,000 worth of matters and another 29 that's on top of that from those core 7 meetings. Not every one of those clients proceeded. Their actions for this quarter is purely focusing on client meetings per week. So some great outcomes. Now look, I'm really, I've actually come to the end of my 45 minutes that I've allotted. So I understand if you've got to leave, but the next case study I'm going to run through, and I'll run through it a little bit more quickly so that we don't go on for too much longer over the allotted time. But the next one is about cash flow. So with the first 2 case studies, the outcomes that these clients have got are simply by taking a different approach, doing something different that's simple in their business, that is designed around improving their profitability and cash flow. They did something different to get a different result. And these particular guys, just this case study, they followed a simple process. We designed what that process would be from start to finish, and then all they had to do was manage the client through the process. What they did is they followed a principle called BAMFAM. And all BAMFAM means is book a meeting from a meeting. Every meeting they had, whether it was a phone call or their initial meeting or the fact meeting or the close meeting, all they did is that they needed to book another meeting after it. That was the outcome they needed to do, because what that does, it keeps the process going. The clients feel like they're in control. However, you remain in control of reducing the time between when you've had that first initial conversation with them through to when you've closed that meeting down and signed the client up. So BAM FAM. There's one thing you remember from today, remember BAM FAM. So case study 3, it's about a client engagement and collection. So with this particular firm, they were another sole practitioner firm, CBD firm, a family-based practice, family law-based practice, 1 principal, 2 solicitors, 1.5 legal support staff, and 0.8 4-day-a-week administration staff. Initially, with this particular firm, there are a number of things that we had to address, one of which was the ratio between the revenues that were being generated and the labour cost to generate those revenues. But what we're focusing on here, which was also part of that, is around what happened from their cash flow perspective. Now, that was the focus. And the outcome was that we needed to improve the cash flow. The issues were that they'd taken over this practice, and that for the period of time since taking over the practice, where their debtors were 0 at day 1, their debtors had blown out to 122 days. Now, I've got some family law practices here, and the firm might say, oh, well, that's often the case with deferred settlement matters. But in most of these cases, the clients weren't deferred settlement matters. They had the ability to pay. All that was happening is that their engagement processes were wrong. The systems that were operating in the business did not support good cash flow practices for the business. They supported very good cash flow practices for the clients. So what the actions were is we very much focused right at the front end. We focused on updated cost agreements, which were focusing on increasing the estimates. So we looked at the methodology around how they were determining their estimates and engaging the clients, and we increased them. We focused on their trust account policy. They were only asking for $500 in trust. You can't even open a file for $500. So they changed it to start with getting an increase to $2,500 money in trust. And then what they did is they focused on better engagement at the front end with that particular client. The result was that over time, their debtors' days reduced down to 54 days. But most importantly, the majority of those debtors' days that kept that those debtors' days up to 54 were the old debtors that were engaged differently. So for quite a period of time, they were running debtors' days of 15 days on their new files under the change cost agreements and engagement approach. But what they were achieving, they were having to hold these other debtors under their old cost agreements. So it was gradually, as those matters were finalised, those debtors' days came down. So let me just show you a bit of an impact now about what happened with that. So just going back, fundamentally what we did is we said, let's update our cost agreements. They were just running with the old cost agreements that the old firm was using. Let's throw that in the bin. Let's create an engagement process with the client that actually suits the business, not the client, in terms of what we should be billing these clients for the work that we do, how much money we need in trust, how we're going to bill them, how regularly we're going to bill them, what our expectations are around holding money in trust and topping that up, and also then around how regularly we need to be paid. And focusing very much at that front end about getting those clients to agree to that. Because fundamentally what happens with clients is they walk in the door expecting to pay. You mightn't think so, but it's what you do that allows them to get away with what they get away with in terms of bills, allow them to get away with in terms of payments. What you've got to do is focus on changing what you do to get a different results that suits your business. So let's just have a quick look at some numbers. So with this firm, they had work in progress at the time that I had started working with them of about $97,000, and about $326,000 was sitting in WIP. Their revenue was approximately $975,000 annualised for the year. So what that produced for them was WIP of 36 days, which is pretty good. Meant they weren't carrying everything that more than just about a month's worth of work in their WIP. But importantly, their whip said that they were going to, their cost agreement said they were going to bill every month the clients for the amounts that in whip. So that should be at the end of every month, that whip balance should be zero. So they engage a client a certain way, do something different in the business, no wonder they're getting the results that they wanted. The debtors were also saying that you needed to pay, put a bit of money in trust, and we're going to bill you, and our terms are 14 days. But the clients just wouldn't pay and they wouldn't follow them up. So they'd do some billing, they'd just sit there, the old matter's taken over from the old firm. That's what the clients always did. Away we go. So we implemented those strategies in the business, and we focused on, as I said, leave the old firm, old clients as they are. We'll gradually carry that debt as it reduces down. But every new matter that we open must be engaged that way that I just described before. So what we did is we didn't focus at this stage on anything on their whip. We just left that as it was, so their whip balances stayed the same. But what we did is over time, we implemented strategies to get those whip days down to 54. And the difference that had in their lockup, so on the same amount of revenue, their lockup went from $423,000 there to $241,000, which gave them a cash injection over time into the business of $181,000. Now, what we then did after this with this particular firm was then focus on strategies after we'd finished collecting those old matters. Focus on strategies for getting more regular billing happening, getting better money into more money into trust, engaging the right type of clients. Not just taking on all the work. And we ended up having a strategy for these guys that got their whip days down to 15, and their debtors ended up being at about 42. So again, they had significant improvements in cash flow. Now, when you do this in your firm, you get a one-off kicker of cash as those days come down, but your cash flow ends up being much more smooth, provided your billing cycles are right around your whip. And the lesser amount of lockup that you carry, the more cash flow that lands in your bank. So these sort of outcomes are very normal sort of outcomes, provided firms take the action to do something different. So that's just a very simple example of changes in some cash collection policies and processes for that firm. Just before I go on and look at this next screen about actions and summarise the actions for fixing profit and cash flow, I want you to think about two things. In most firms, you think about your clients, and often I see the issue around billing and the issue around cash flow is, one, the systems and processes of the firm is what's causing that, it's not the clients. Two, the issue with billing and the issue with cash flow conversations rests with the fee earners, the solicitors in the firm. It doesn't rest with the client. The issues are bigger in your heads than it is with your clients. You let your clients get away with it. And I always hear firms saying, oh, that's different in our area, that's a whole pile of excuses. The reality is clients are clients. The sort of services you provide, you choose to provide the services, and you have the ability to choose what you charge your clients, and you have the ability to require your clients to pay you when you want them to. Because if you don't, if they don't fit your rules, then you might not need to be doing that work. So I just want you to think of this in terms of your clients. First of all, the majority of your clients, when they walk into the door, come from two sources. You don't do a lot of marketing. You don't do specific strategies that drive new inquiries into the business. You make your clients come back to you despite yourselves. You do your work. They come back because they've either done work with you before, so they're an existing client, or they've been referred by someone. There's a small amount of clients in most firms that just are walk-ins. So most of the clients have come to your business either because they're an existing client or they're a referral. And with that being the case, they have generally made the decision in their head that they are going to buy from you. They've already made that decision. If you're somebody who has to go and create your own sales in a business, you've got to go out and market and find those people and create those relationships and build inquiries and do all of those things, and then go into the mode of engaging with those clients to buy from you. But in legal firms and in nearly every professional services firm, those clients have walked in the door via a referral, already an existing relationship with you. They have already made the decision to buy from you. The second thing is the universal perception of legal fees is that they are expensive. They are expensive. And what legal firms do is they continue to disappoint their clients by not being expensive. So from a sales perspective, from a revenue generation perspective, first of all, your clients want to buy from you. They've already made their mind up that they're going to. Secondly, they've already decided that they think you're expensive. And then what do? In your business, you go and absolutely sabotage that whole opportunity to generate revenue. You poorly engage your clients. You discount your fees. You write off time. You don't demand that your clients pay you for doing work. If you're building a house, you're to pay that builder a deposit before they'll even start working for you. And there's, you all have heard the number of stories where builders have gone bust and deposits have gone. And then you get to a certain stage, unless you've paid, they'll lock up and they won't go back to the job. So why, they just provide a service to their customers. They produce something for them. Professional services firms, legal firms are exactly the same. So just remember that next customer you see, they've already decided that they're going to buy from you, and they already think you're expensive. So don't disappoint them, and build your systems to maximise the outcomes for you. So just to wrap up in summary, the actions to fix your profit: get the right ratio of fee earners, so it produces the right average rate. Work out the maths to determine your result. How many fee earners can we afford? How many matters do we have to open up? What's our revenue need to be? At what rate? How much do we have to bill? Increase your average rates. You will be too cheap. You will be too cheap. Every time I get my clients to increase their rates and bill clients more, it happens without any real inquiry. Clients will just pay. So you got to focus on increasing your matter numbers and matter dollars, and focus on your pricing, and reduce or increase your fee earner numbers. If you cannot get through the work, and if you're riding off time and you're being inefficient, you might need some more fee earners, because the faster you get those files done, the quicker you increase your revenue. Improve your productivity. Make sure that your team and you understand how many hours you need to be charging on client work. If it goes into, if you're doing time costing, time costs everything, so you don't lose anything. And focus on weekly reporting. Focus on what people need to be progressing their files every week. Formally hold a meeting. Improve your recovery of your WIP, which comes fundamentally from better client engagement. All of this is fixed with better client engagement. If it's in WIP, bill it, and build systems to improve that recovery. And if, as I said before, if you want to do something different, if you want to get a different result, you've got to do something differently. So they're just some simple actions to fix your profit. Once again, we go into a lot more detail in this in my book. Actions to fix your cash. Always engage your clients around costs. You must have that conversation, or have to have that client sign off, even if it's just a conveyance or some matter that's under $750 or under $1,500, depending where you are, and you don't do a costs agreement. Still make sure the client understands what they're going to be billed, and sign off saying, yep, I understand. Do a plain language costs agreement. Look, the reality is you've got to provide it to them. The reality is most clients don't read it, but make sure if they do read it and you need to refer to it, it is simple. Provide a plain language covering letter that goes out with your cost agreement, so it hits the client square in the eyes with your scope of works, what the estimate of fees will be, what the time of the billing is going to be, so when you're going to be billing, what's the intervals, either via stages or via each month. What are your payment terms? What are the trust account policy? How much do you need to have in trust? A big one here, turn your billing into an administration function. If you are engaging your clients properly, then that's all it should be. The worst billers, the worst people to do bills, the worst people to rely on for cash flow are the authors, are the fee earners. They are too emotionally attached to clients and the outcomes to bill them appropriately. Turn it into admin. Weekly trust withdrawals, and then have a dedicated debt collection person. So that by itself is just to give you an idea of what some firms are doing out there and getting different results. The systems that you need to implement have got to be ones that are relevant for you, but the fundamentals of running a legal firm to produce improved profit and cash flows are the same across all firms. Yeah, you need to tweak it, you need to change it so that it aligns to the products and services you produce, but fundamentally your practices are the same and these strategies work. So what for those of you who have participated in webinars before, what I offer for at the end of every webinar is the opportunity for 5 only firms. You can drop me an email and lock in a free 45-minute online meeting where I'll just get a little bit of information from you, and basically I'll run your numbers with you through those calculators that I had up on the screen, and we can just spend some time talking about what's happening in your firm. Spend some time talking about what actions you can take. And I'll tell you what I see from the numbers that you give me. And those meetings are absolutely obligation free and absolutely cost free to you. So take me up on it. We'll schedule something in over the next week or so and get you to give me a little bit of information, and we'll go from there. What I'd also like to invite you to, and you'll get some marketing material on this over the next few weeks. My next Grow Your Law Firm webinar is on Wednesday, the 16th of March at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So that's Queensland time. I'm located in Brisbane, but I see my clients all over the country. So that's Eastern Standard Time, Queensland time. Can't remember exactly when daylight saving finishes. It'll help me out with my travel schedule, but just remember 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. daylight saving time. And in that webinar, we're going to be focusing on developing your growth plan. I'm actually going to take you through the steps where that you need to focus on and assess the areas that you need to focus on to improve your profits and cash flow. We'll delve into those in a bit more detail. You'll get an invitation, but you can also register for that at financiallywellorganised.com. So just to wrap up, the thing that I'd like to leave you with are 2 things. First of all, if you want to get a different result, do something different. Don't be insane by doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And secondly, remember that the vast majority, in the high 90% of your clients have already decided they're going to buy from you, and they already have a perception that you're expensive. So don't disappoint them and sabotage your results by having ordinary systems and processes in your business that don't produce those results that you deserve. So again, thank you for your attendance today. Sorry I've gone about 20 minutes over time. I hope you've enjoyed today and got some value out of it. Take me up on my offer, matt@fwo.net.au, to lock in the time for the first 5 people to email through their requests for that meeting. My name's Matt Sleater. I'm the lawyer's accountant. See you next month. Thanks very much.